Welcome to Writing Black Joy Season 2. I am Sophia Robinson, and I'm a writing coach and an editor and a story listener, as well as the producer of Writing Black Joy, a virtual space that celebrates, centers, and promotes the voices of Black writers and storytellers with joyful and uplifting stories. Here, you'll find conversations with some of my favorite Black writers and storytellers, learn more about their projects and the joy they're bringing into the world, hear more about their creative process, and find inspiration for your own creative ventures, as well as tips and strategies for writing poetry, blogs, creative nonfiction, fiction, plays, and so much more from all types of writers, as well as a sneak peek into the writing life. You could even find your next favorite writer, book, poem, play, or blog. And if you are a Black writer who is looking for a coach or an editor to help you bring your joyful story into the world, then click on my website below to find out how to work with me. In the meantime, let's go to today's guest. Today's guest is Cherise Wiltshire, who is a book club buddy of mine as well as an author. Charisse is a fun and spirited woman of God who loves traveling the world, biking, and enjoys finding that hidden literary discovery in any and every bookstore. And she has recently penned her own book, Heart's Cry, a 40-day devotional designed to strengthen your Christian walk. In her professional life, Charisse is a successful entrepreneur who runs her own business consulting firm, Wiltshire Consultancy International. Cherise and I talk about our spiritual journeys, dealing with loss, how Charisse wrote and published her devotional, her creative practice, and so much more. You'll also get to experience some of her fun personality and encouraging nature. You will find links to Charisse's work in the show notes, and I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Writing Black Joy. And today I have a fellow book clubber with me, my friend Cherise. Cherise published her book a few months ago, and she's done all kinds of incredible things since then. We're going to talk a bit about that. But first, I just want to tell you a little bit about her. Before I do that, just in case you've wandered on here and you're not sure what this is Writing Black Joy, and it is a series and a season where I am celebrating Black writers, storytellers with joyful tales to tell, whether they be real or not. We have documentarian, we have filmmaker, fiction, nonfiction, children's book authors, and Charisse wrote a devotional. So we have all kinds of things going on in this season, and I'm so glad you have joined with us. If you want to check out previous guests, either from this season or from season 1, just check the show notes and you'll see all the links. But let me tell you a bit about my guest today, Cherise Wiltshire. Charisse is a fun and a spirited woman of God who loves traveling the world, biking, and enjoys finding that hidden literary discovery in any and every bookstore. Charisse is known to always have a dramatic and usually funny story to relate to her family and friends. She has a flair for storytelling, and her love for writing was a natural progression of lifelong reading, primarily spiritual books, but also those that her local book club selects. See, told you, she's one of my fellow book clubbers. Charisse's favorite pastime is to swim in the ocean after a long day's work. Sometimes we do it together. And she also loves to share her experiences and encourage with others in their spiritual faith. In her professional life, Charisse is a successful entrepreneur who runs her own business consulting firm, Wiltshire Consultancy International. So I am so glad to have you here, Charisse. Yes, and thank you so much for joining me so early in the morning. I love a good early morning chat. So let us get started. I'd love for you to tell us a bit about your book, what inspired you to create it. Yes. Have it close by, hold it up and show us. I know you do. There it is, Heart's Cry. I love it. I love that cover. We're going to talk a bit about that cover as well. But anyhow,
yes.
Tell us a
bit. So my book is it's a 40-day devotional, and it really my heart in writing this book is to ensure that and encourage persons, whether you are in the faith or you're kind of not too sure, or you kind of, in a way, kind of put it on the back burner, but you want to get back in there, but sometimes you just don't know how. How do you make that first step? What kind of tools should you use? And because for me, when I was kind of like on the fence, like, yeah, I think God is cool, but I'm not too sure if I really want to have that level of commitment, I had really good support. And then I found resources that really helped me to get to that place that I always wanted to get to, but either wasn't too sure or didn't feel confident or just didn't think it was going to suit my lifestyle as it was as a young person. You know what I mean? So I realized that because I had that support, it really made faith a lot easier to walk it out. But then also it helped me to see that faith is quite compatible with our daily life. Actually, it should be, and it's fun and it's exciting and it's wondrous. And I think for a lot of us, we may have touched the surface of it or had some framework that we think, okay, I'll do this little bit, I'll sing a song, I will touch base with a little prayer in between. That's enough, and that's a good start, but there's so much more to be had in the life. And so the book is really about helping people to get to that point of being able to see the wonder, and also how do you apply it in your day-to-day practical living, because sometimes we see God as kind of like far off and distant and not applicable to our day-to-day life, and it's actually quite it's quite exciting and beneficial to see how you can apply God to your life every single day. So the book starts out on a conceptual note, like we're going to look back and say, okay, well, what is this whole faith thing about? What is God about? And then we eventually get to the last section of the book is like, who is Jesus to you? How do you apply God to your life? So that's pretty much a quick synopsis on the book.
Excellent. I love that quick breakdown. I'd love to know a bit about your own journey with your faith. This is something that you have been journeying on since childhood. Is it more something that you've come to more recently? I'm curious. I'll share a bit about my own journey afterwards, but I'd love to hear a bit about yours.
Yeah, so I wasn't raised in the traditional church. So I was kind of raised in a more, how should I say, non-traditional church. So a lot of things that I think a lot of people would have experienced didn't, right? I had a non-traditional faith walk. And so when I became around 14, 15, the love of writing actually helped me. Love of reading actually helped me. It's because in school, eventually I was able to find fellow readers. So one of the fellow readers happened to be a pastor's daughter. So obviously faith came up, and then she was explaining to me things I hadn't really heard about. And I didn't really, either I heard it in passing, but I didn't understand the concept. So she was helping me to understand. And then she invited me to her church concert. I went and I got saved. I got prayed for. And I had this really amazing experience of feeling after that, after being prayed for, that my eyes were open. Like I felt alive. I felt like light. There was something that happened that night that I knew was something I wanted to keep in my life. And it was a beautiful experience. I remember the days after, like anything that was going on around me, I was like in my own little happy bubble, like nothing could affect me, right? And I was like, I'm gonna definitely stick with this. This is ready to be. But being 14, unfortunately that friend, she transferred to another school, and that was like my link to faith as an early Christian. And when she left, unfortunately I didn't stay focused on it. So I kind of like went on with life. You learn about partying, you learn about boys, you learn about all the things, Not different
boys are the root of all evil. Don't care what anybody says. I'm just joking. Boys, you're awesome. Go ahead, Cherise.
Yeah, if you choose the wrong one, root of all evil. If you choose the right one, it's absolutely fantastic. So you gotta be wise with those choices.
Discerning with those and all choices, for sure.
It's true. So I went into my teenagers, went into community college, started obviously learning about this world and going into the world. We will say going into the world. You'll hear that a lot in Christianese. And I was having fun. I was out partying. I had all these great friends. I was at Barbados Community College. Then I went to UE and even more, trying to find joy in the world, right? And ever so often, intermittent points, I will be reminded of God, but by that time I was like, yeah, Jesus cool, but I about this life. I kind of about living my young years, and I had it in my mind, ironically, that I think a lot of us think this, like, Jesus is really cool, but I think I'm going to circle back to him, like, when I retired. And
I'll get back to this later. Stick a pin in this. You can stick a pin in this. Be coming back just now. Hold this here, so
give me a couple decades of like letting go like a pop guy, and then I can circle back to you when I retire and near to death, and I gotta get my life started to meet you. And I'll come back. And God in his mercy kept reminding me, and I think I always like met up with Campus Crusade. They will have like these mission trips at the university, and they will talk to me, and then things like that would happen, but I was never really gonna commit, because I really was like, waiting till I get out of university, then I'll have my money, and then you really say something, I'm out in these streets, And it's interesting because when I finished university, I spent the summer at my aunt's in Washington, and every day I was like, Jesus, I want a really good job. When I get back home, let me get a good job. And I just spent every single day. And then I made a promise to God. I said, if you get me a good job, I am going to commit to you seriously,
Promises to God. That needs to be the name of your second book.
That'll be a long one, right? Promises not kept to God. Wow. But how he keeps promises to you,
Exactly, I know, right?
So true. Yeah, he gave me this really good job that really was a perfect fit for me, and it really launched me into my career path that really was a good fit for me. And ironically, I ended up at this offshore bank that had quite a few Christians, considering like the rate of the percentage of Christians to the overall staff complement was pretty impressive. So, which was cool. And I never had any issues with anybody being a Christian. But then I met this girl named Trudy. And Trudy, the reason, obviously, as I said, I didn't want to commit to being a Christian is because I wanted to be out there having fun. But Trudy was a Christian, and she seemed to be having a lot more fun than me. She seemed a lot more joyful, a lot more peace. She seemed purposeful. She seemed like she had it all together in a way that I didn't outside of the commitment to faith. So I was like, yeah, I think something is different here, and I want to look into it. And series of events happened, and she invited me to her church, which ironically ended up being my pastor's daughter, her father's church. And I'm like, of all the churches in this country, it has to be that one.
Girl, they always say, I have a friend who always says there's no coincidences here.
There is none. It was really meant. And so I went the thing was, I wanted to commit to faith, and I went to what we will call a traditional church. And I was like, God, okay, I can give you like maybe 4 sessions, because they've been good to me. So I can do about 4 Sundays.
Find you like I think that keep you thing though. Well. I find you like this bargaining thing though, like, so God, you got 5 minutes. 4 weeks.
Best 4 Sundays. I think that can keep you good for a little while. Circle back in a couple of years, Well, I went to this traditional church, and I had the best sleep of my life. I literally slept almost from the beginning right to the end. Like, my aunt had to like hit me to get up, And I remember walking to church and being like, oh, man, I don't think I think
you ain't gonna met these 4
working out. And literally, as soon as I got home, my friend messaged me. She's like, Charisse, I know you want to be like in a traditional church and stuff like that. That's cool, but maybe you could give mine a try, I think it would be more your fit. Same friend Trudy, yeah. More fit for your personality and, so on. And I was like, all right, 1 session. I given her 1, and that's it. Just so she can't say I ain't tried. So the least I could do is go to church once. And I went, and that was it. I was hooked. I was like, I knew when I walked in, I felt it. I felt this is where I belonged. And it will seem strange, but when I was walking in, I remember feeling like having this vision of angels rejoicing. And I heard a voice say, "Welcome home." And it sounds crazy to everybody, but I felt and I know that happened. And I was like, I remember saying to myself, that's all well and cool, but I only here for one session.
Like you had an hour, now you got 50 minutes, so make it count.
Exactly. And the interesting thing about that experience ended up being that they were talking about Soul Hurts. That was actually a whole series that was going on, and they were either into the second part of the series. And everything they talked about literally was like my life. Everything they were talking about. It was as if somebody wrote all my life up to that point. And I remember saying, this is impossible. Like, this can't be true. Like, you can't know this much about me. And then they were saying, this is how God can help you to really address those root hurts and those root issues and heal, totally heal. And as we know, in this world, we hit some horrible experiences. You know, we go through some rough stuff. So I was like, well, maybe this is the answer to the bitterness I feel and the anger I feel. And maybe I should give this a try, you know? And after, the interesting thing is, I talked to my best friend. She was not a Christian at the time. Eventually she became a Christian, and she said, I knew, seeing how you change, God was real, because Charisse was my best friend. I love you, but you were one miserable bee. Okay, so
I cannot even imagine that. I cannot even imagine. Listen. Yeah. I've known, like, we known each other maybe like 8 years or so now, and then Charisse is one of the most pleasant, happiest, cheerful, always has that smile on her face. I can't even imagine it.
Yeah, and she knew me from literally first day of school. We've been best friends from first day of school. So she knows the things that you go through and how hard life can be, and trying to manage that hurt and those frustrations. Bitterness sets in, right?
Oh,
hurt. You have to learn how to cope with hurt. And one of the ways is bitterness. One of the ways is putting up walls. One of the ways is, you come up with these things just to cope. But yeah. And she was able to say, you know what, I know God is real because I saw that change in you. You always were a beautiful person, but I could see how you were getting miserable and frustrated and disillusioned, right? Because life comes at you fast, and it comes at you hard, and it comes at you painful, right? So I was able to see, okay, well, this is where this soul hurt is being manifested in this way, And over time, I gave God that one Friday a try. Still, here I am. So I tricked God. I thought I was tricking God, and God tricked me. But it's all good.
God, what are you doing, Charisse, girl?
Yeah, and I would say my life has been so much better. I mean, in terms of the things I thought I was going to miss, I saw how God gave me them in a healthier way, right? Things that wouldn't end up being a detriment to my life, but more a blessing. Because God is just as much fun, right? I think we think God is, and this is for me personally, I shouldn't say we. For me personally, I thought God was the antithesis of fun. So I thought I gotta go on my knees and get ashy knees. I gotta sit down and pray like this and hum him sing some. And I just thought, like, this thing won't be no fun. I don't want it. And yeah, God is super fun, and we crack jokes. We have and sometimes it's really deep, because I don't want to seem like God is this shallow. Like, yes, you have fun, but yes, we have deep conversations. And then sometimes God is like, okay, sometimes I get upset with people. I'm like, God, I really could use some fire and brimstone to bring this person just to answer me.
If possible, could you send a thunderbolt?
Please and thanks.
Right there, please. I would love that. Thank you.
And then, God in his mercy, and he would show me, like, I had this one horrible boss. And I remember I said to God, I ain't saying you should hit him with something. They could at least make you a little sick. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to get God to just get a little sick or something. Yeah, so you'll get off my back. I would love to tell you that I'm this perfect heart, compassionate. No, you pissed me off. You could hold a little sickness for a couple of weeks or something, get off my back. you know, and, and God was like, no, you have to love that person, and I want you to pray and bless that person, right? I was like, you see what this person doing? How this person frustrated my life and got me stressed out. Da, 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 da. And God was like, no, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to love your enemies. You pray for them that despitefully use you. So I was like, all right, man. So I kind of half-hearted get into it. Like, well, you could bless him if you wanna. So, you know, start real half-hearted with this thing.
I'm gonna love it, but I'm not gonna like it.
Exactly, right? And I remember then God started to show me how this person's behavior is rooted in an insecurity, and where that insecurity is rooted in a hurt. And it led me to realizing, well, this person is no different from me. I am rooted in insecurity. My stuff is rooted in hurt. So how can I come to a place of judging this person when I struggle with the same thing, and God was loving and compassionate to me and still is, to bring me into a place of wholeness? So if that's how God is with me, it's time for me to pray for that person, and to really be a part of intercession for that person to get to a place of wholeness, right? And the beautiful thing about that is then I started to cry, because I cried and was like, God, I asked for forgiveness because I wasn't looking at this the right way. And then really praying for that person from a place of compassion and genuine connection with their struggle, because I realized I struggled just as much, right? Maybe not in the same way, manifesting the same way, but coming out of a similar hurt.
Yeah.
And I prayed, and I really prayed for that person, and I stayed in a place of prayer for that person. And I saw how, because I wasn't coming back with any animosity with that person, it made the relationship over time come to a really good place. So it's those sort of experiences that I really want to encourage people to get to that place. And that's what the book is about. Getting that place, a journey with Jesus, where he helps you. And I should say at the end, though, that person I was able to move away from that situation and get into a way better situation. So God eventually did release me from the situation, but I came to a place where I understood the person's hurt, and it was from a place of compassion and not condemnation, and wanting them to be burned in the fires of hell.
Well, I'm loving this side of you. I'm just joking, but seriously, I love that. I love that you talked about that. I have so many more questions, which this is probably not the place for, but thank you so much for sharing that experience. I said I would share a little bit of mine, and I will. This is my confession. I grew up in the church, probably opposite you. I grew up in the church. And when I hit university was when I was a lot more dedicated. Anybody who's really interested, I have whole blog posts I've written about this. So I will not bore you. I'll just drop links in the comment. And I guess the kind of the reverse happened to me. I had a lot of loss. I've lost a lot of people that were really close to me, and that loss, I kind of drifted away from the church. So it's not so much a part of my life now. Well, not at all, really. But the thing about it is, and it's so funny because I've been thinking about it. By the time this comes out, I might even have published some of them, because I did actually write a few of them, writing about where I am now. Because like I always say, I have some friends who've left the church and who are like, they left the church, they don't believe in God anymore. They're like, this is, they kind of like really walked away from that life. I don't know if I feel like that's true about me. I think I for the last, it has to be multiple years now, I felt a bit in a space of limbo, because I do not feel like it's not real or whatever. That's not what I feel. I don't really believe that. But also, like, maybe I don't know what I believe, but it certainly isn't what I believed when I was in my 20s, and when I was, at church 3-4 times a week, and Bible study and prayer group and teaching Sunday school, because that was my life.
Wow.
Almost 30. And yeah, so all I can say is it's not anymore. And I think about it a lot. I used to be so angry at God. I used to be mad you know, for taking away perfectly good people and leaving some of the rubbish ones down here. Like, I don't even know how I feel, right? And no, I still get mad if I think about it from that perspective, so I try not to. But
Yeah.
I still think about it a lot because I feel like it's still a part of the person I am now, even if it's not a big part. It's still a part of becoming the person that I am now. And a few weeks ago, I wrote this this long blog post, which I definitely haven't posted yet, but I might found the courage to do it by the time this goes live. And it's called "Things I Miss About God" because I had, you know, I was
Oh, I
just
love that. I love that title.
reflective because there are things about that part of me that was I miss having that faith. I miss having that level of trust. There are a lot of things that I miss. I miss that person who felt hopeful and joyful about those things. So I wrote that long essay. Like I said, maybe I'll have the courage to have posted it by the time this goes live. And if it doesn't, and people want
I want to see it. If you don't post it, send it to me because I'm actually really intrigued. I would love to read it.
I will definitely send it to you. And maybe this will be the little kick I need to actually post it because I feel like if I feel this way, there may be a lot of people that are feeling this way who you feel like the church or the experiences you've had in church or even in faith have not lived up to what you thought, but you're not quite ready to walk away yet.
Yeah, I actually hear that quite a lot. And the interesting thing about this book is that it's been reaching more I would say persons who are not as committed as they were before, or persons who are in the faith and still going to church and everything, but they don't have that passion, they're struggling. I would say the best word to use is struggling. Rather, they're still in church, doing the Sunday thing, doing Bible study and everything, but still struggling. Actually has reached more people that way than I would say new believers and so on. And I think just like you, if you're in church for a couple of years, I think after a while, I mean, the structure of church, I think disillusionment is going to set in at some point, right? And I was very intentional in this book in not talking too much about church, but more the relationship with God, because I think we all have had bad experiences in church in many different ways over time. As I talk to people, and for some reason, people really tell me a lot of their stories and stuff. Some really painful, heartbreaking things have hurt people, and I mean crushed people's spirit in ways that it's very difficult for them to go. And I used to say I wouldn't even want to see the good side of a church after if something like that had to happen to me. And that's why in writing this book, I'm being very intentional, not linking it necessarily to the structure of church, because I think church is a group of people. It's people who have committed to faith, not necessarily
we're flawed, all of us.
Yeah, exactly. So I really think this would be a good book when you do get a chance to read.
I have purchased
and maybe it will help you.
Several copies of this book. Don't let her make you think that I about the place and support him, like girl. I've purchased several copies of this book.
You have. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. But I think this really works with a lot of people like that. I think one of the steps for a lot of people back into faith, and I think for persons and what I've seen with friends that have grown up in the faith, their faith has evolved, it's changed. And you can go back to that original way you were approaching faith because you've grown, you've had experiences, sometimes really tough experiences. And that's one of the books I want to actually write about is wilderness experiences, as one between that and writing about church and some of the things I think the church has done really well and some of the things I think that God really is putting on my heart that we need to improve, right? But between those two, but with wilderness experiences, like just like you, I've struggled with that. Like beautiful people, good friends, good acquaintances that have passed, and then you see these pop down people put the place just rough to all, and they were dead,
doing well
and prospering, and I'm like, God, I'm just saying you could take 2 minutes to like address this situation, you know.
Very upset. So
yeah, it's frustrating.
I'm not the only one. Yeah, it's very frustrating.
I can handle anger because I sometimes get really upset at God and I scream and I shout and I'm just like, this is not fair, you know. But one of the things especially as it relates to death, that has kind of been a comfort, not a full comfort, but it does help, is sometimes we look at what we've lost, but we don't always take time to thank God for what we had. So I would have had a really good friend who died of COVID a couple of months now ago. And when I heard, it was absolutely devastating. I was like, she was a fantastic person, like with children, and to lose somebody, lose your mother. And, once again, I was just like, God, I just don't understand why bad things happen to good people,
Yeah.
But I had to make an intention about where can I see the good in this? And one of the things I've realized is not a lot of people have good friendships. And friendship is a blessing. And I said, yes, I can look at everything of the loss and the frustration and all of that. But then I can also say, God, thank you for the years of a beautiful, genuine friendship with this person, and that kind of helped me to kind of reformat my perspective to, okay, what I've lost, but what I've already been blessed with.
Yeah.
And that kind of helped me a little bit to kind of reorient how I was thinking. But death is one of those things I also struggle with, where I can't understand why good people go and God just, but I do talk in the book about the wisdom of God, and there's a bigger picture. We see very, 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 very limited of the bigger picture that is being orchestrated. And God, we got to admit, we live in a fallen world. We be dealing with sin, we dealing with decay, we deal with death. It's part of this world we live in. But you have God there that helps you, and he cries with you when you cry. I had a really bad breakup many years ago now, and I remember I started to cry, and as soon as I started to cry, the rain fell. And I was just like, and I just felt like God was saying, when you weep, I weep with you. And that was kind of almost like a physical manifestation of the fact that God hurts with us. He's not so far away. He is closer than a brother. He weeps with us. He empathizes with our pain, but then he also is there to show, give us be our sustainer, give us that strength to make sometimes the next 5 minutes, the next 10 minutes, the next day, and eventually you get to a place where you can look back and realize he's helped you through a very dark time in your life, either bringing people who would encourage you, or hearing his still small voice in your spirit, or sometimes, honestly, just a random TV show that has that one sentence that just reaches that broken part within you. He's very creative, so that's what the book is about, giving my personal experiences about how God is practical, and he is eager to help and to be our encourager, be our sustainer.
I love that. And thanks for going on a little tangent with me, because like I said, it's something that I think about a lot. There, I've had a lot of conversations about, like I said, I write about it a lot. And yeah, I can't be the only one that feels that way. So we can leave that there for now, but I'm sure it'll come up more as the conversation continues. So you agreed to join me here. So I imagine that Black writers writing joyful and uplifting work is also important to you. And I'd love to hear a bit about why it's important to you.
Yeah, I think Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie put it in a way that I didn't realize it was ruminating in the back of my head for some time. And she talked about the danger of a single story. And I find
but that
a lot of
in the notes, by the way, that's one of my all-time favorite TED Talks.
Yeah, I'm just such a big fan of hers. Oh my God. If I had to meet her, I'll probably like faint.
I don't plan to faint. I have a lot of questions for her. So I don't plan to faint, but
yeah, I'm a big fan. Like, I follow her on everything, Insta, Facebook, anything she puts up, I'm gonna watch it. Yeah, and I really love what she said in that TED Talk, because I love books in any type of book, but I do find sometimes when we're talking about the Black experience, it is very much towards pain, and towards this almost. And I don't mind that, because the human experience is painful, but I feel like maybe my purpose in life is towards more of a encouraging part, so that we have It's like almost like a rainbow, a kaleidoscope of colors, and the painful stories that have to be told, they
Yes.
have their place. But I think just as much so the joyful stories, the happy story, the encouraging stories have their place as well. And having that perfect balance is important because we're at different points in our lives. We need different stories at different points in our lives. So we got to make sure that we're meeting people need and wants, and allowing that kaleidoscope of colors to be beautiful. One color won't do it. You need everybody's voice. You need everybody's stories, and to have that full range is important and balance.
Yeah, I love that because like you, I feel sometimes like that balance is needed. I'm like there are things that you want to tear down, but there's also things that you have to build up. There's stories that are meant to show the experiences that people are having and highlight those things and shine a light on those things, because there are a lot of things that people aren't aware of. And also you need the stories of joy, of encouragement, uplifting, that type of thing too. So I love that you are here to bring a little balance into the world with me. I'm certainly there for that. Do you have a quote? I know you've mentioned a few things. You quoted a couple of people, but do you have a specific quote from someone you admire or from your own work that you would like to share with us?
Well, Albert Einstein said, don't strive to be a success, strive to be a value. And I really love that quote because I really think that everybody has a contribution to make to the development and growth and edification of society. And one of the things I try to do in my writing is to try in some way, rather it's more like a devotional perspective, which would literally my own personal real stories, or writing a novel, a more creative spin, but bringing people to a place of encouragement. My value, I think, and my purpose in life is to bring encouragement. Rather is, as I say, fiction or nonfiction, to bring that. That's my purpose in writing. So I really love that quote. Don't strive to be a success, because I've met, especially in the corporate world, girl. Oh my gosh, people striving to be a success at any cost, willing to do very immoral things, anything. But are they adding value to society? Because yes, you may achieve that great position or that great level of success, but behind you is a trail of a disaster and destruction. You've destroyed your village, you've destroyed your community and your society to gain something that's fleeting,
Yeah,
that
you can't take with you.
Yeah, it's an illusion, really. So that's why as much as some people focus on success, and that is a good indicator to some extent. I don't want it to be my only indicator. If I'm less successful, but I've added value to my society, I've encouraged people to be in some way better or to achieve something better, then I don't want, at the end of the day, my father always used to say, when you go to sleep at night, make sure nothing is keeping you up. Make sure your conscience is clear. And for those people that I've seen a trail of disaster behind them, no. I want a beautiful path of flowers and happy people behind me. And that's why I'm looking at adding value, not striving for success.
Yeah. I love that. That's perfect. Let's talk a bit about actually writing this book. Yeah, I know, right? So I'd love to know a bit about how long it took you to write the book, if you had to do any research and that type of thing, like the actual writing process. How did you find it? Because I know you've always enjoyed writing. It's always been a part of your life. But tell me, how was the actual book writing process?
Yeah, I found, so by way of explanation, I had been writing devotionals because I really felt at a point, maybe a year or two into my faith, I felt like God was telling me it's time for you to stop reading devotionals, but start writing devotionals. And I was like, okay, let me send it to a couple of friends who I think would suffer in this situation I've been called to. And a couple of my workmates that were also Christians. And it so happened that people really, really loved them. And then they would start sharing them with other people in the office, and other people like, well, why don't you send them to me directly? Why you tell me you write these devotionals? And then people recommend to friends, and it became this whole like email list of people that I was sending to, maybe up to maybe 6-7 years I was doing it. And then eventually I felt like, okay, you've gone as far as you can with this. It's time for you to actually write an actual book. And when I started out, I really thought I was going to just put all those devotionals I wrote already, fling them in a book.
Into the book,
My life is done. My work is here is done. I'm done.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
Take
man.
that life. That shit that take on my life. But when I started trying to put them together, it wasn't working. And I realized, like, no, I think I'm supposed to write a whole new book. And then I was like, what should I write? And I think it was Toni Morrison that said she wrote the book that she wanted to read. And so that's what I started doing. I was like, well, what book do I want to read? And I was like, I would have really appreciated a book that really encouraged me to see how exciting and fun and joyful and understand the bigness of God. And then show me how I can apply it to daily life, right?
Yes.
So that's when I started writing the book. It was very off and on. I was very, okay, I'll do some today. A week will pass, but I'll do something else. And as inspiration hit, and the years went by, like 2 years went by, and I had like a very rough version of what I wanted. But then I decided to okay, you need to get intentional about this, right? And it was the only book I was writing. I was writing novels. I was writing all sorts of other types of books. So I was like, okay, you need to finish this. So I really felt like God was like, you need to finish this book. Like, you need to get that. So I got a lot more intentional in doing that and in editing, because I don't like to edit. I actually really hate editing. I like writing. I just don't like editing, having to go over one sentence a million times. I like somebody else doing that.
Editors are for, and I'm not even, like I was saying to someone the other day, I'm not even convinced. Yes, we yes, we have to edit our own work, but also I think we're too close to it sometimes, and we do need that external person to
do
us as well.
So it was actually quite fortuitous that a friend recommended to me an editor, and she did a fantastic job. First of all, she was on me like every couple of days, like, did you make the amendments? And I needed that because I can be very distracted with other things, work and studying and everything. I was like, I'll get to that eventually. But she was on me, God bless her. And she got me to a point of having the first finished draft. And then it was time to look for a publisher. And looking back, I probably should have self-published, but I didn't have the confidence. So I went into a partnership publishing situation. And in the end, I think I did the majority of it myself, because I just didn't like certain things that they wanted done. It didn't work for me. So I think what I learned, and it's about learning, right, is that probably self-publishing is the best way to go. But this was a good little hand-holding. Thought I needed the hand-holding experience. So I think next time I'll definitely self-publish. But they got me to the finishing line, I must say, to get the book done.
Yes.
And I really, really like how it turned out. It was frustrating sometimes because I was doing my master's full-time job. It was like a lot at points, but I think sometimes for me personally, I'm a person, as much as I kind of take on a lot, I think I work best on that situation because I like to have different things going on. I don't mind work, but I like to have my creative bucket also filled. And, I would like to do something like riding my bike or going swimming for relaxing. I like different buckets, having different things to do. So sometimes people are like, your life is so busy. I'm like, yeah, but I'm addressing different things at different times.
Yeah.
So
and sometimes you need that. Like there was a time I'm just like that. I have my creative stuff. I have, even this project, I have this, that, the next. I have work. I have other stuff going on. And at one stage when I was feeling overwhelmed, someone was like, you can cut out some of those things. And I was like, I don't think I'd feel any less overwhelmed if I cut out the creative side of things. Maybe if I could take out work, that would be nice, but apparently you can't pay your rent with smiles. So cutting out work wasn't going to happen. So it's just, I needed those different sort of inputs in my life. So I definitely know what you mean on that front. I'd love to know, what was your proudest moment with this?
Receiving the hard copy. actually
Oh,
from my publisher. Just seeing it in real time, in like real life, and you can hold it and you can hug it, you can smell it. I smell it all the time.
it smells so good. Oh my
It's so good.
goodness.
I'm
Oh,
obsessed. And that was the real moment that I was like, oh my gosh, I actually created something that I can touch.
mhm.
Because the struggle with writing is a lonely journey for the most part, because it's something that's in your head, that you're trying to describe and put in a tangible way all by yourself for the majority of it, right? So being able to get feedback, so this was a big time and I can actually hold it. But then persons reaching out and saying, that book really, really was such a blessing to me. Yeah, I'm a Christian all these years, but the way, you were able to display God, it really encouraged me and ignite that faith and that passion,
Mhm.
that we all need at some point. We all need that encouragement. And
Yeah.
that was such a blessing to me. And how people said, God said to them, open up this book when they were feeling down, and the next devotional was specifically speaking to what they are dealing with, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and it's just been amazing testimonies and stories of how God has used this tool that I in the darkness of the night, I'm like typing away,
Type in.
thinking like, this makes no sense. Like, does this make any sort of, nobody's going to read this sort of struggles in your head, to somebody actually saying, yeah, it's been a real blessing and encouragement to my life. It's a beautiful feeling, because you feel like, okay, God is using me. I have a purpose in
Mhm.
life.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I'd love to hear, what obstacles you faced when you were creating it. I know you talked about the partnership that you made that didn't quite work out how you thought it would. Any other, or you can talk a bit about that, or you can talk about any other obstacles you want to talk about in terms of, because I think sometimes it's easy, and I did this before I had done my own book. I looked at all these, I always say, look at all these people publishing books now. I'm reliably informed that maybe only 3% of people actually publish the book that they write, or they
Oh
see
wow.
3% of people who say they want to write a book ever do it. So I was looking around thinking, everybody's writing a book. First of all, that's not true. Like, that's not a real thing. But for me, people are out there and they're like, look at my book. And I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. And then when I started doing it, I was like, oh, there's stuff you gotta do.
Yeah, it's
I knew that,
hard.
but like actually doing is a whole other conversation. I'd love to hear the obstacles that you faced when you were creating it.
Yeah, so one of the big things was confidence. I think that was one of the things where I was like, there are a million devotionals out there. There are a million Christian books out there. Like, what do you really have to offer that is, on par with some of the great devotional books out in there in the world? And then, is my writing any good? Like, yes, I've been reading all my life. People have been telling me
Yes,
my writing
yes,
is
yes,
good.
it is. Yes, it is, by the way. Just
Thank you. I appreciate it. But you're in that very lonely space where you're struggling with your own insecurities, and you're like, I don't know if I really, this seems so simple. This just seems so, and you struggle with that. And the beautiful thing is, once again, in faith, is that there's a part of the Bible that says, I knew you um, before you were formed in your mother's womb. And I always knew my purpose was to write. So rather it's a success or not, that's what I've been created to do.
this is
And
what
it's
it
like,
is.
this is what I've been created to do. So rather it's a success or not, that is left beyond me. But this is what I've been called to do. So let me fulfill my purpose. And that takes a lot of weight off, because now you can just write, because that's what you're supposed to be doing. And then another thing I realized is that everything I write doesn't have to be published, because I use
No.
so much of my writing for therapy, just getting my thoughts down. And my personality type is very much about being able to process my thoughts through writing.
Mhm.
So I realized, like, I was putting myself under so much pressure, like, you starting writing all these books, and all these drafts, and what's the sense, it takes so long for you to actually finish the book. But then I realized, well, who says every book has to be, this is just my gift, this is my creative process. And the book that's supposed to get to the final stage of publishing, it will get there.
Mhm.
But everything you write doesn't have to be published. And I think that takes a lot of load off. You write because you're creative, and that's what you've been born to do. That's when you are one of your happy places. So just write because it makes you happy. Unfortunately, all writing doesn't make me happy because I hate editing, but I've solved that problem by realizing, hey, there are professional editors who will gladly do this for you. So that took a lot of the weight, I think, off of for me in my next book, where I'm like, I'm just going to write, and then the editor will help me along that to get into that final clean finished version.
Yes.
And then also publishing, I think that was one of the things that I didn't have enough information about. But I think going forward, I will have a better understanding and confidence that I can do it on my own, and not necessarily think that I have to depend on a publisher to do it. So that's a couple of things that I think I struggled with, and I learned from and found ways around being able to be a writer that can get some stuff out there, but without the pressure.
Yeah,
that is not necessary.
I agree with that so much. One example, my friend Javasia, who, if you want to check out her episodes in season 1, she's a freelance writer. She's about to publish her first book as well, and she kind of likens it to music. And as somebody who's also a musician in a former life, I get it. Every note you play is not on the stage, right? You could spend hours and hours and hours playing music, trying out pieces. This didn't work, that didn't work, this, that, whatever, to go on stage and sing, 4 or 5 songs. Think about an album. You might write 1,000 songs for an album, you only have 10. It's such an accepted part of the process in other creative forms. And I think sometimes we have to see some of our writing as a rehearsal, right? It's not gonna make it. It's not gonna make it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that metaphor. It's not gonna make it onto the stage. That's absolutely fine. The thing that makes it onto the stage is the thing that's meant to make it onto the stage, right?
Yes.
That the other writing isn't wasted the same way that playing your scales isn't wasted and playing your arpeggios isn't wasted. Like, that's not wasted either. It's just a part of the process.
Yes,
Love
I
that.
agree.
What advice might you give someone who is thinking, and I will say specifically about creating something like what you created, some sort of devotional or something, what advice would you give them if you had to come across one, or one's watching now?
Yeah, for my type of book, any book of faith, obviously it's a partnership, right? It's a partnership between you and God, because I really think you're the tool that he's using to reach people, right? So I think you have to really be in that place of listening to God's still small voice, reading your Bible, seeing, for me, how it happens, because at the start of every devotional, I have a Bible verse, and then sometimes in the devotionals itself, and a prayer, and at the end. And what I realized is God is the original writer. He wrote the best book, right? Which continues to be a bestseller for centuries. So I'm just saying, he's the one who's the best at it. But I also find that people of faith, we are supposed to use our experiences, right? Because writing always has to come out of experiences. Rather you hear it or you went through it yourself, that's how we start to create that world or that foundation to write. So I would say go out and experience life. Like, go, whatever is your interest, whatever is your hobby, try to get out there, try to reach people, connect with people, because everybody has a story, everybody has a different perspective that really can bring richness to your characters, can bring richness to your experiences that you may apply into your writing. It can bring a compassion, an empathy, that you can include in your writing as well, different perspectives. So I would say, yes, for persons of faith, yes, obviously it's a partnership with God, but I think God also uses our life experiences in really tangible ways that can be used to really enrich your craft. Yeah.
Perfect. I absolutely love that. So just before we wrap up, I'd love to know a bit about what you are reading right now, because we are avid readers here. In this conversation. What are you reading right now, or what do you like to read, I should say? Even
so I vacillate. I go from like Christian books and then non-Christian books, and I'm like all over the place. I read a lot of different things. The only thing I don't like too much of is too depressing books one after the other,
Yeah.
because after a while that really kind of like is heavy, right? So yeah. So I am actually reading one called from Sumunk Kid called The Secret Life of Eve. I love that book. I'm reading that. And that I actually found in the airport. I traveled a couple weeks ago to I went into I seriously, every time I'm going in departure lounge, I find myself going to bookstore, and I'm saying to myself, Grace, you got enough books at home, why are you going in this bookstore?
No such thing.
No, I found myself there. I don't even remember walking in. I just saw myself in front of this book, and I was like, I've heard about this book, and maybe it's time to read it. And then they had 3 all together, so I'm going to read one after the next. And then I'm also reading a really interesting book about questions about the Bible, tough questions about the Bible, and answers about them, which I find really, really good to help me. Sometimes there are some questions on faith and things that it's hard to kind of figure out.
Questions.
Yeah, maybe I should lend that book to you, because it's actually really good. And I went to the Christian bookstore, actually had a sale, so I got it for like $10 and $5 books and all sorts of stuff. I literally bought like $100 in books, like a whole big bag, because it was so cheap, And so that's one. And then I'm reading this one called Child of All Nations, and it's actually written by an Asian author. It's the second book of 4, because it's a quartet series, and it's it's not a typical book for me, but I really try to get out and see the perspective of other cultures. I really try to be intentional every once in a way to do that. And it really speaks, interestingly enough, about colonization and him having this idealistic view of Belgium that was their colonizer, and then how he realized that is not the childhood idealism of youth is not as beautiful when you grow up and see how the control structure oppresses people and so on. So I find that one actually really interesting. Yeah, I find that one really, actually, I'll lend them to you. And it's really interesting to see a person's perspective on colonization, not from our side of the hemisphere and the English perspective, right? Because we have our own version of it here, but to see it through another culture. So I really love that book. It's not easy to read because, obviously it's cultural perspectives and words and stuff that you're not familiar with, but it's a beautiful read because you can get so much out of it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna have to come and raid your bookshelf apparently. So you'll be seeing me shortly. Soon.
Yeah, I was trying not to have so many hard copy books, but I can't read at night on Kindle. I like a hard copy when I'm reading at night. So
I was actually having this conversation with a friend of mine a few hours ago. I have a friend who lives in Australia. Shout out. She always watches everything, all of these. So she'll know exactly who she is getting a little shout out there. And I was saying to her that I love my Kindle. I discovered the Kindle when I was traveling more, and having 6 books in your suitcase meant that you couldn't put anything else there. So the Kindle is like life to me. But now I am like, but I really want more hard copy books next year. And what am I going to do about that? Because I don't know if for me, it's like both of my sisters love books. We all love books. And both my sisters are very much like, they have big bookshelves and they collect books. And I was trying not to be that person. I was trying to be like, minimalist. And I'm going to have my Kindle. And I'm like, but I want real books. So we're going to see what happens next year. But in the meantime, Cherise, I come in for some of yours. So
please do. Anytime.
That's fine. So that is perfect. One thing I had wanted to talk about, but I don't think we're going to have time for today, was travel and how travel has influenced your writing and your sort of perspective. So we may need to have pretty much every guest I've had on, not just this season, but last season. We need to have another conversation. So I might just have to do like a instant replay of bringing back a lot of guests because I have so much more that I want to talk about. So we won't talk about that today, but I'm just throwing it out there so that we know next time we talk, we're going to talk a bit about that. Maybe
yes,
that's
for sure.
The next book.
Maybe, yeah.
One last question I want to ask you before we do the wrap up is, how important was finishing this book to you? One thing I found when I physically finished and self-published my first book was that finishing has such an incredible power of momentum in your life. Finishing something that you start, just to me, that was life-changing to me. And it kind of it was eye-opening to me in terms of, as you said, reflecting on other projects that I may not have finished and getting me to finish other projects that needed to be finished as well. It just had it carried this real life and momentum with it. I'd love to hear a bit about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think finishing the book, because it took so many years for me to finally get to this place, because life happens, right? And I actually was talking to a friend, and I was telling him this is a couple of years ago, that I'm really frustrated that I haven't finished this book. And he was like, but you were studying, doing your master's, you were working full time, you were doing all this stuff. Like, how, you're one person, how do you expect to be able to do so much? And now that you finished, your studies, now you can get back to it and it will all work out. And then I realized, and I said to myself, sometimes in life, we can be too hard on ourselves, and I think the beauty about time is that in the fullness of time, things happen when they're supposed to happen. And when I finally did finish, I felt like I had to go through some stuff to put into this book that if I did write it the years before, but I think I should have finished, it wouldn't have had a realness and an authenticity. Yeah, it wouldn't have been the same book. I needed to go through some really rough stuff, and to see how God can come in those hard places and sometimes bring, yes, a quick solution, but sometimes he just gives you just enough sustaining power to get through it and allow you, in the humility of a hard place, to be able to empathize with another. So I would say to a person who's looking like, okay, how does it feel to finish a book? And I'm like, I'm relieved that I finished it, but also appreciating every single step of the journey, the rough times, the good times, the not too sure times. My book helped me to become a more mature, a more understanding, and to some extent, a more driven person, because now I know I can do it. So yes. Now the impetus now is kind of like it build up this momentum, right? So now you're on like, yeah, I've done it before, so let's just keep this moving.
Yeah.
The momentum is there.
And for me, it showed me the kind of ups and downs to it, and understanding when I was going through the next book, this is the part that you're gonna feel it's going a bit dragging, it's going a bit slow, and at points where I might have previously given up.
Yes.
Not giving up now, because I understand, well, yeah, it feels this way. This is normal. This is part of the process. You're gonna carry on. You're gonna finish it if it needs to be finished. If it isn't, and you don't, well, so be it. So yeah. that is the reality of finishing. I know you have a bit of a social media presence, so we're gonna drop all the links in the show notes, both for the podcast if you're listening, for the YouTube channel if you're watching us. So tell us where we can find your book, and tell us also if you're here in Barbados, where they can get a copy of the book as well, please.
Yeah, so at Things Gospel, so they are carrying the book currently right now, and I'm working with Cloister. By the end of the week, it will be in Cloister bookstore as well, but it's also available on Amazon, soft copy, and the digital version. And also I have Instagram and Facebook, Cherise Writes, so you can look for me there. And I try to give updates on like interviews and that sort of thing, that persons could find out a lot more about me, because yes, the book does have personal experiences, but like talking with you, I would have obviously shared so much more that people could identify with and hopefully be encouraged by. So yeah, so I'm out there. Follow me if you're interested.
Yes. Don't just follow her. Don't listen to her. Just follow her. Do I tell you? My show. Follow Cherise. And Cherise said by the end of the week, but please note by the time this goes live in February 2022, the book should definitely be in Cloister. If you're in Barbados, if you're outside of Barbados and you want to experience some of this goodness, Amazon, you'll get that book available on Amazon, and hopefully Cherise will be back.
Yes, I hope to be. I'm so excited. I absolutely enjoyed this. This was so much fun. I knew it was going to be fun because, when we get together, it's always fun.
Always
fun. So.
It's always a good time. And not sure what order these are going to air in, but I'm also going to be having the esteemed leader of our book club, Kim, joining us as well. Yes, to talk about her podcast, all about Barbadian history. So, this is good. This has been good. You might have already heard Kim by the time you hear this, or you might be thinking, "Ooh, that sounds exciting." In which case, hit subscribe. And
of course.
And you will hear all about when that one drops and goes live. All right, Cherise, thank you so much for being here with me, my sister Locke's twin, my book club buddy. And thank you so much. I'm so pleased that you finally put this book into the world. Looking forward to future stuff. And everybody get Cherise's book and happy reading. Bye. Thank you for joining us today. You can find out more about our guests in the notes below, and don't forget to hit subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss new episodes when they drop. And if this has inspired you to get your own writing project into the world, click on my website below and learn how you can work with me as a writing coach or an editor. Until next time, I send you big love from a small island.